Welcome to Filmcast Without a Cause. We're two film-talking rebels, not quite sure what we're rebelling against. I'm Jacob Rosdale, and I'm joined, as I am every week, by the one and only P-Dog, Pat Boberg. What's shaking, Pat?
P-Dog, I think I could go with that. Thanks, Jacob.
Well, we start out, as always, by talking about some movie news highlights. And most news buzz on the internet is still revolving around Star Wars and Disney's plans for a new trilogy. Pretty much every other web posting on movie blogs is this director is interested, this director is not interested. Some of the directors I've seen just names like dashed as, not going to do it. Steven Spielberg, J.J. Abrams, Quentin Tarantino even I saw a web posting about. But we do know that the new Star Wars, at least episode 7, has a writer, and that would be a Michael Arndt. This news didn't surprise me. I mean, he wasn't like, I didn't have a list made of who I thought, Pat, but are you familiar at all with Michael Arndt?
I didn't know him by name until I saw that this news came up, and it said that he was the Toy Story 3 writer, and what was the other one that he's well known for? Little Miss Sunshine scribe.
Yeah, he won an Oscar for Little Miss Sunshine. He was nominated for Toy Story 3. The reason it didn't surprise me is because he's now part of, after doing Little Miss Sunshine, he became part of the Pixar Brain Trust. And it just makes sense to me that Disney is going to go with the resources they have. They have a proven, I know maybe they should have second thoughts about what happened with John Carter earlier this year when they put so much faith in Pixar people. But no, I am reassured by this choice. I think it's smart to go in-house on this one.
I completely agree, but I never thought of it, there's second guessing, because didn't they do the same thing with Tron where they talked to Pixar?
Yeah, I think that was a little late in the game that they had with the Tron Legacy. I think they had them look at the script after it was already in production or something, and they beefed up the father-son dynamic a little bit or something. It's been so long. Tron Legacy has pretty much faded in my memory, actually. But looking at Michael Arndt's upcoming work, obviously Toy Story 3 is coming up. We'll have a chance to see how he handles big franchise films sooner than later. He wrote the screenplay for the Hunger Games sequel, and he also has the new Tom Cruise film Oblivion coming out in 2013. So we can, maybe after those two, we can start making harsher judgments about whether this guy is fitted for Star Wars. But he hasn't completely given up animation either. I saw that he's also attached to the untitled Pixar movie that takes you inside the mind, which comes out in 2015, as well as a Phineas and Ferb screenplay. I'm not quite sure what Phineas and Ferb is, but I think it's a cartoon.
It's a children's show that actually was, I think, the spin-off of a different children's show, and it's super popular. So
okay.
I don't know. I've never seen it, but I know it's super popular.
Okay.
Can I just steer this conversation real quick? I know that this is a bad rabbit hole to go down, but I recently watched Safety Not Guaranteed, and I don't want to get into it too much because you haven't seen it. But then the director of that, Colin Trevorrow, was thrown out as a possible director for this film. And after seeing that movie and hearing that George Lucas really likes Safety Not Guaranteed, I don't understand where some of these rumors are coming from, because it's very light-hearted comedy with a slight sci-fi tinge. But is it right now pretty much anybody who's directed a film in the last 2 years is getting a successful film on some level, getting their name bandied about, or do you think any of these hold weight?
I heard that rumor about the Safety Not Guaranteed director. I'm not even going to attempt his name. When I first saw that headline, I thought that must be his people putting out that rumor. But I guess if there's some George Lucas rumor whispering about it, there might be some bearings. But I would hope they went with someone. Even like I think Jon Favreau's name was passed around. And I don't think he would be the right guy. I think he's a pretty vanilla director, but he's at least proven that he can work with CGI. I think you need to have someone who has at least a rudimentary experience with tentpole films. I'd be really surprised if they gave it to an indie director or someone with very little experience. I'm hoping, and this hiring of Michael Arndt as a writer is reassuring, that they are going to go with established people.
Yeah, I would think that would be the fear of most Star Wars fans. If it's not George Lucas, that they're going to hand it over to somebody who doesn't necessarily have action credibility, or you even said it, CGI credibility, somebody who's worked with a green screen and, motion capture. I think that Colin Trevorrow, if they did that, that might be kind of resembling the the Mark Webb obscure selection for Amazing Spider-Man, which everyone said, really, Mark Webb? But hey, he pulled it off, so maybe Colin Trevorrow could pull it off.
One other director who was asked about whether they wanted the job or not was Guillermo Del Toro, who is another one of those guys who is attached to pretty much every property that, because he's proven he can work with franchises in the past. The latest rumor of Del Toro's involvement involves what I'm going to call a quote-unquote Justice League Dark film, which is going by the working title Heaven Sent. It was just an internet rumor a couple weeks ago, and then this week he confirmed he actually is working on this film, which is a DC Comics film involving their supernatural characters, which is kind of an interesting route to go, considering they're trying to compete with Marvel, I imagine, to go really obscure instead of...
Well, Jacob, do you know much about this comic entity? I really knew nothing outside of the Swamp Thing and Hellblazer were involved, and that was very light knowledge of that. Do these characters have a central universe with about not just DC, but like a central storyline that they coexist outside of maybe something new where they thought, let's throw these guys together and come up with a team?
I don't think they really do. Obviously, Constantine, the character who is in the Hellblazer comic books and was in the Keanu Reeves film, debuted in the Swamp Thing comic book, so those characters have a history. But the characters that are talked about being in this Heaven Sent film include Swamp Thing, Constantine, a character called Deadman, who Del Toro was attached to doing a film about years ago, the Demon, who is another supernatural, hellish character, and Zatanna, who is a witch or sorceress character who is much more in the mainstream. She was on the actual Justice League, and I think she dated Batman or something at one point. Their backstories are mixed around now. But only recently, they actually put out this Justice League Dark comic, which I haven't read. It makes sense with Del Toro's sensibility, because obviously, I think DC's been trying to get him to work on a film for years, and he's obviously more drawn to these monsters and supernatural creatures.
Sure.
This is actually a really exciting prospect to me, because as much as I want to see a Justice League film or a Flash film or a Wonder Woman film, I actually really like DC supernatural characters, specifically Swamp Thing. He's probably one of my favorite characters in the DC universe, and he's had movies before, but those were in the 80s, and they're not bad. Well, one of them is bad, but the Wes Craven original Swamp Thing movie is actually quite enjoyable. So I would rather see a Swamp Thing movie, but this makes a lot more sense on a commercial viewpoint to do this. Maybe do a second chance at Constantine. I don't know if this will ever happen, because Del Toro seems to get attached to a lot of things that don't, and it's even though I say it's more commercial than a Swamp Thing standalone film, we're not even talking C-list heroes for the most part. We're talking straight D-list.
Well, the thing I always thought about this is that similar to the Justice League, now that you've kind of established who Justice League Dark is, they seem to have a little more story or credibility to be a team, kind of like the Avengers and the X-Men and Fantastic Four. They live in their own pocket, and all those characters grew up with the same sort of issues and nemesis or people that they're fighting against, and knowing that the Justice League is really just a hodgepodge of all the major characters in DC, I didn't know if this would have the legs to stand on, but knowing that they come from some sort of similar universe in some respect, and that Del Toro, who's known as, just look at Hellboy and Pan's Labyrinth, he is the mystical, creature from the Black Lagoon style director. It could happen. And
he's worked with D-grade characters before. Blade, too. I know we have different feelings of where that ranks in the Blade series, but he's worked with those kind of characters before. I'm dubious about whether this will happen, but I'm excited nonetheless. Something I can't say I'm as excited for, Wars Vii. And we usually don't talk about trailers on Filmcast Without a Cause, but there's been so much talk about this one. I felt I had to bring it up. Pat, did you watch this online?
Yes, and I don't understand why everyone's losing their wig over this trailer.
And the thing is, a lot of the comments I read, like on Facebook or whatever, I couldn't tell if someone was really excited about it or really pissed off, because I read both ends of the spectrum, and some of them kind of blurred the middle, where they just said, Brad Pitt, parentheses, good-naturedly, go to hell. So I don't know if that means he was so excited about it he wanted Brad Pitt to go to hell, or if he was a fan of the book or whatever and was upset about it and wanted him to go to hell. But I did not want to watch this online. I assumed it was going to be attached to Skyfall because it's a big movie. We haven't seen anything about World War Z yet. There's been some talking. It's a large-scale zombie film. That's pretty much all I can say based on the trailer.
Well, do you know anything about the book?
I do, actually.
Okay, I was going to say, because I have two issues with this movie, not to butt in, but I'll just go straight to the book one, which is this doesn't appear to have anything to do with what the book is about. I haven't read it, but I do know that it's about a man who takes oral histories after the fact of the world, the near end of the world, due to this zombie onslaught. And it just seems this film almost completely disregarded the source material.
And from what I'm familiar with Max Brooks' work, Max Brooks actually being the son of Mel Brooks, the famous comedian. I haven't read Wars Vii, but I have skimmed the zombie survival guide he wrote. And the zombies he writes about are the slow, traditional Romero zombies.
Oh, that's even worse.
And these aren't even Dawn of the Dead fast in the trailer.
Yeah, this is like a tornado of zombies fast.
Did you ever see? And I've talked to a couple people about this, and they've just looked at me like I'm a crazy person. This very popular, like it was a popular clip on the internet, the Indian Terminator or something.
No,
it was a guy. It was an Indian robot. There were like thousands of him, like Agent Smith in the Matrix, and he would form balls or giant people. And it looked ridiculous and stupid, and so people passed it along online. The zombies look like this Indian Terminator movie. It just look insane. I'll probably cut that out because I'm talking way too obscure.
No, that's perfectly fine, because that makes sense there, that the Matrix Revolution, that was probably one of the worst part about the sequels, is all those Smiths, and they just overdid it. And this looks like it's being overdone. And then putting Brad Pitt in there, it's like, didn't this guy make art films and Oscar bait for the last 8 years? What is this?
And he's a producer on it, too. I noticed that the Plan B production logo was at the very beginning of the trailer. And for the most part, I just don't think it's a very good trailer.
No, it's terrible. It looks very cookie cutter.
Very cookie cutter. So it didn't. I mean, I am someone who would be excited for a large scale zombie film. I think zombie films are usually done on the cheap, and so you don't get like the army fighting mobs of zombies. You usually get, a parking lot full of zombies, and then the people run into a building.
Yeah, this almost seems like it could have been if the family from 2012 didn't experience the end of the world due to whatever geological event happens, they get hit by a zombie apocalypse instead.
I can't remember if it was you who likened it to this on Facebook, or maybe you commented on something else. You mentioned Spielberg's War of the Worlds on a post.
Yes, that was me. This is my least anticipated film of the decade, because that was my least anticipated film of last decade.
Yeah, it seems like a very similar tone. They're both things I should be excited about in principle. I like Brad Pitt. I actually like Tom Cruise. I like aliens, I like zombies, but actually looking at this thing, it's very hard to get excited about it.
So we are counterculture, obviously.
Yeah, but that said, it comes out, there's nothing else opening that weekend. I am likely to go see it. Talking about movies we have seen, though, however, let's just transition into our feature review for the week, 007 in Skyfall.
3 months ago, you lost the drive containing the identity of every agent embedded in terrorist organizations across the globe.
007 reporting for duty.
Where the hell have you been?
Enjoying death.
After his last mission, playing chaperone to the Queen of England as she parachuted into the London Olympics, Daniel Craig is back as Agent 007, taking on a supervillain with a personal vendetta against MI6 and Judi Dench's M in Skyfall.
Mommy was very bad. The two survivors, this is what she made us.
Everybody needs a hobby.
So what's yours?
Resurrection.
2012 has been a year oversaturated with franchise blockbusters, prequels, sequels, remakes, reboots, and adaptations designed to lead directly to further adventures. And now, as the year comes close to the end, we get another installment in cinema's longest-running and one of its most successful franchises, Ian Fleming's James Bond. Skyfall marks the 23rd film in the spy series, 25th if you count the non-canonical 1967 Casino Royale and 1983's Never Say Never Again, and is Daniel Craig's third feature as cinema's definitive super spy. Craig's Bond reign so far has been defined by attempts to keep Bond relevant to a modern audience, stripping the character of the goofy excess of previous eras and giving us a grittier, angrier 007. Many Bond fans, like myself, feel that his first go-round in the role, 2005's Casino Royale, is one of the franchise's best, but its follow-up, Quantum of Solace, as I mentioned last week after rewatching it, pales in comparison. This third feature took a while to get off the ground as Studio MGM's financial troubles proved the biggest threat to Bond's future since the laser pointed to the groin. But it all worked out for the best as Skyfall is now opening on the 50th anniversary of Bond's first cinematic outing, Dr. No. Pat, this has all been a very long way of me asking if you feel that after half a century on the silver screen, with Skyfall, does Bond, James Bond, still have the power to engage, excite, and entertain audiences?
Oh, there is no doubt that Bond has the goods that bring people to the theater, and Skyfall has them on display for the most part, I'll say.
Okay.
But Bond has always sold what audiences want to see, and not just the sex and violence. I mean, he's always been just rich with spectacle. The giant sets, the intricate plots, globetrotting, whodunit, how will he get out of this mess scenario, and the grand scheme. And he always seems to almost die in every act of every movie he's ever been in. He would have so many complexes if he were a real person. But I would venture to say it's such a powerful model that the derivatives that have come from it, other super spies have broken the super spy model and have forced Bond out of its international playboy with a gun model and back into the real world guy, or not so much real world, but super spy that can
A human.
do the Krav Maga fighting, the one-man militia thing. And obviously our next segment is going to go a little more talking about Bond and, your knowledge of him. But do you feel Skyfall fits well into the bombastic lineage that is James Bond?
Very much so, and I actually think this is sort of a rarity in Bond films in the level of ambition that's in it. Not saying that the stunts are any bigger or that he goes to any place wilder than outer space or anything, but you can tell that the makers of this film, director Sam Mendes, several screenwriters including John Logan, who's been signed on for the 2 sequels, I think they set out to make the definitive James Bond film. And I don't think most films, I don't think most people making James Bond movies are trying to make the best possible James Bond film. They're trying to make a good James Bond film or the next James Bond film. And I might
take issue with that, but let's keep going.
I'm not saying it is the definitive Bond film, but I think that's what they were going for. They wanted to tell a story that had all the staples in it, delivered all the right things. And I think a lot of Bond films, especially early on, they came out once a year, pretty much. There was a house style to it. And I really think this one reached to be something better.
The interesting thing about this movie that I've had several discussions with people about is that while James Bond is the title character of every one of these movies, this does not seem to be a James Bond film. Daniel Craig is on it more than anybody else, but it also digs deep into his personal history. But it almost feels like it's a forceful cover-up of what the true story is of M and her time leading MI6, if let's talk specifically about Skyfall.
I guess I can see that. I mean, Bond is rarely... he's not a deep character. I think that's one reason Casino Royale resonated so much with filmgoers and Bond fans, is that it was the first one to try and humanize him. Not the first one to try, but the one that was most successful at it. And I think this continues where Casino Royale left off in that regard. We get a little bit of the deconstruction of the character, but I think it's also adding back some of the things that were stripped away in Casino Royale. Some of those excessive things that are actually quite fun, and like the gadgets and Q. And so it kind of has a foot in both of this serious deconstruction, Casino Royale Bond, and a step back in maybe the goofier late 60s, not quite the Roger Moore era, it's not quite that goofy, but I think it tries to have it a little bit both ways, and that really worked for me. I'm not saying it's a perfect film. Maybe we'll transition into the flaws in a little bit.
Well, let me just put my stake out there, and we can have at it. But
okay.
Last night, Marita and I watched Casino Royale, and to me, that movie kind of brought me back into the fold the same way that when I was a kid, the first Bond I ever saw on the screen was GoldenEye, and it was awesome. It had all the globetrotting and the not end of the world, but like a villain who almost seems like he could end the world if he really tried. But personally, I don't feel like Skyfall is a great James Bond film, and I'm not even sure it's a great mystery thriller. There's great thriller elements, and the first hour and a half is extremely entertaining, and you feel like it's going somewhere and he's doing something. But for the final third and everything, it just seems like it's clumsily built, and James Bond as a character becomes boring to me. You don't see the weight of his near death at the top of the film bear out after you meet Javier Bardem, and you don't really feel the frantic unease of all the undercover agents that have been outed going even beyond that, the villain doesn't seem all that complex. This is a major revenge film, and that's it. He doesn't have any type of ulterior motive like like I said, take over the world type motive like you see in every other James Bond film. This is just a guy who's out to kill and get back at, who he's looking to get back at. I don't want to give too much away there, but not being a student of James Bond, as you seem to know a lot more about the histories we'll get into, what I know most about is about Sean Connery and Pierce Brosnan and their foes who, are going for astronomical wealth. And Javier Bardem is simply just a madman out for revenge here. And him and Judi Dench take over the majority of the second half of the film. And I just kind of lost James Bond in the mix.
Bardem is still a super villain. In fact, his character is one of my problems with the film, is that it has a bit of a Joker problem to it, where...
Absolutely. I was going to say that. I'm glad you agree.
He has everything planned to a psychic degree. And it's a little bit distracting. I think when you're comparing Casino Royale to this film, Casino Royale is actually more the outlier in the Bond franchise, being a spy or more of a suspense thriller. I think the series as a whole is more of fits more into the action genre. That's why I don't think you're ever supposed to believe James Bond is actually going to die. But I mean, there are films that fit more than the thriller category, or like especially the early Connerys, before, like when his equipment consists of simply a suitcase that contains hidden coins or something like that. It's much more grounded and realistic.
I would say the first half of this film is set in a traditional James Bond style area where it's in foreign locations and he's a lone gunman style approach. And, it makes sense that he can't recruit several people or an army of people to do his spying for him and carry out his tasks. But after that, it's in MI6's backyard, and everything that happens with Javier Bardem's master, or his character Silva's master planning, seems like he would run into a lot of things that you find in modern spy thrillers where they are dealing with armies of people and they have to be very sleek and not run through the street like Javier Bardem seems to be doing. Like, he just happens to be lucky enough to be getting away at all the right points. It broke the reality of the film, personally, for me. It's because it was set in London.
Yeah, and just note that you're looking for reality in a James Bond film. But
yeah, but it's always the situation with which it's in. I mean, if he's in Cuba saying GoldenEye, or if he's in some Filipino island and, Man with the Golden Gun, or he's set out in space like in Moonraker, he's a man on his own. If he's at home where all the other 00 agents could be, couldn't he realistically recruit all the other 00s to help take this out? It wouldn't just be him with a gun in South Scotland.
No, that totally makes sense. But yeah, I do like where it went in the third act and how it became more of an intimate action set piece than most of these Bond films end at the villain's hidden, secret base, and it's a hollowed out volcano or something. And this ends in I'm not going to spoil too much, but in a small church.
Well, I also feel like Javier Bardem, he plays his character so well. I really enjoy him, and I've heard several people say that which it's way too early and definitely hyperbolic to say that he's the best Bond villain, which is tragically ridiculous, but he is really good as the character. It just doesn't make much sense that the third act he's found doing things that he's too smart to fall into.
Yeah, no, I definitely I can agree with that. Other problems, before I get into the problems, I won't wager to say that this is one of the best, Bond films. Give it see how it does on cable and on rewatching first. You sent me a link that had it listed as the number 2 Bond film, and I've seen several lists made since then that are ranking it in the top 5, and I think it's too soon to go that far.
It's too early.
But I will say, I think it is definitely the best looking Bond film I've ever seen. A lot of them had this house style. Even the Brosnan ones look like very generic action films, and I think they've amped up the production values and the behind the scenes crewing for these Craig films. I know they got Roger Deakins to shoot this one. He did No Country for Old Men, among lots of films, and they got Stuart Baird to edit it, and it doesn't look like your standard Bourne movie anymore, and I really appreciate that. So I just wanted to say that before I also said the thing that bugged me the most, besides Bardem's character and his variable intelligence, is the fan service is a lot of fun, but it really raises questions in the nerd part of me of how it fits into the continuity. I'm not going to spoil anything because it is a fun surprise, but a piece of 007 lore shows up close to the third act something that was in the Connery films, and both Bond and M relate to it like they have a knowledge of it. Simultaneously, the film is establishing that this is still a reboot, and we're still getting caught up to where Bond was in earlier films.
That's something I wanted to discuss when we get to the Bond canon and whatever.
Yeah.
Because do they ever reference other films outside of Quantum of Solace? So
that we will talk about in our Nerdery 101 segment.
Oh, fantastic.
Let's just leave it there. I will say I do think this is one of the most entertaining tentpole blockbuster films of the summer. Or not, it's not even summer anymore. What the hell am I talking about? It was more entertaining, I think, than any of the summer blockbusters.
I would say it's entertaining, but I have the same problems with this that I think I have a major problem with The Dark Knight. So I recommend it, and people will enjoy it just as I did. But I just feel like there was such great characters in this that we're never going to be able to see again, as that's the way that Bond handles their characters.
Well, Skyfall is rated PG-13 for intense, violent sequences throughout, some sexuality, language, and smoking. When we come back, we will talk about what's new on DVD, and then start Nerdery 101, where we talk about 50 years of James Bond history. Stay tuned. New on DVD, last Friday, The Amazing Spider-Man came out on Blu-ray. A lot of buzz about the Blu-ray release, actually, because people thought it would have all the deleted scenes, that it would explain Spider-Man's untold story.
Do you know if it does?
Having watched all the deleted scenes now, I can say it does not.
Huh.
It just has the scenes that were cut out of the trailer where the one Indian doctor is like, do you even know what you really are? And they don't explain anything further. Yeah, I like that movie. I know more than you did, so I picked it up. But what's coming out this Tuesday? Brave, the newest from Pixar, which a lot of people are kind of mixed on, and I've liked it more than others. Pixar Short Films Collection 2. Those are always good. A Fantastic Fear of Everything. Pat, I included this on here just to see if you knew anything about what this film was. Did you click on the link?
No, I just did, and the Blu-ray cover of this is awesome. Simon Pegg. Is this the movie that has like 1 billion different people in it?
I have no idea what it is. I only saw that it had Simon Pegg in it, and I'm like, Pat loves Simon Pegg, so I'm going to let him know that Fantastic Fear of Everything, whatever the hell it is.
I have not heard of this, but this will definitely be posted on the website for people to see. It's Simon Pegg in his underwear holding a sparkler?
It looks ridiculous. I almost don't want to know anything about it, and maybe see it someday. Or maybe not. Maybe never know what Fantastic Fear of Everything is.
Maybe we could host a Google Plus hangout where everybody rents this film and we all watch it simultaneously.
Oh, I don't have a special segment picked out for the next couple of weeks, so maybe we can do something with that. Savages also comes out, so disregard when I announced it was coming out earlier. I was bamboozled. Also out this week, The Watch, which we reviewed on this podcast. Disappointing comedy, I think we both
Can I
felt.
just say that I heard a friend of mine on another podcast, one of his guests, call this film the Attack the Block for Stupid Americans? And that just fits perfectly.
No, that is a good description. I'm jealous of that review. That's very pithy. Also coming out on Blu-ray, I just wanted to add this one. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, new to Blu-ray. Pat, did you check out anything this week on the telly or in theaters?
Yes, I already mentioned I watched Safety Not Guaranteed, but I can't talk about it because I want to talk about it with you eventually at some point. I finally followed through on your recommendation of Sound of My Voice when I was in Omaha with my wife for a day. She was at a conference. I watched that. Quite interesting. I did enjoy it. I will say I enjoyed it more than Safety Not Guaranteed, but that doesn't tell you much. We also watched The Lincoln Lawyer the other night after finally getting around to it. And I got to say, Matthew McConaughey really acted his face off in that film. And the director, Brad Furman, just go back to Star Wars. I think he could pull off a Star Wars.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I watched Margin Call, which I know you're a fan of. And that is a really tense, and what you don't normally see. It's almost like a war movie, and that whenever a movie is made about a war, while the war is going on or right as it ends, it's generally not very good. To have this movie come out so close after the financial meltdown and be that good, it's pretty interesting.
I did really like Margin Call and Sound of My Voice. I have not seen Lincoln Lawyer, but I'm going to kind of echo your appreciation for Matthew McConaughey with what I saw this week. I saw Killer Joe, which is a film that came out this year. It actually came out in July in theaters. It just now made it to Winston-Salem this month. It's a William Friedkin film, and it also stars Emil Hirsch, Gina Gershon, Thomas Hayden Church, and Juno Temple. And that's pretty much the entire cast. When I was watching it, when it started, I'm like, this feels like a play. Like, the dialogue was really stagey, and there were lots of scenes of the same characters yelling at each other in different rooms. Really small cast.
Sure.
And then I found out at the very end of the credits that it is an adaptation of a play by Tracy Letts, who also wrote the play Bug, which William Friedkin, I think that may have been his last film, with Ashley Judd. And he also wrote the very popular play August Osage County.
Which I've seen.
Oh, it just played here at the School of the Arts, and I wanted to see it. Is it a good play? I know they're making a movie.
Oh, man, it is. It's a play, and it's a Pulitzer Prize winner, and it lives up to those two things. It is super dark, extremely vulgar, and you do not feel good coming out of it.
Yeah, and that's what I would say about Killer Joe too. It's very entertaining. I was gripped the whole time, but it is a dirty, dirty, dirty film, and it earns its NC-17. Matthew McConaughey, awesome in it though. I also saw him in Bernie this year, and he was funny in that. I never had any appreciation for McConaughey until just recently. Besides Dazed and Confused, obviously he's great in that. But I always wrote him off, and no, I'm a fan now, I can easily say. But I don't know if I recommend Killer Joe to everyone, but if you listen to that description and how many times I said dirty,
that's make sure you know the person you're watching it with.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, very well, very well. Back to something we teased earlier. We originally planned to do a holiday season preview this week, but with the release of Skyfall and it being the 50th anniversary of James Bond, I wanted to bring back something we tried earlier this summer on the podcast when The Dark Knight Rises came out. We had a Nerdery 101 about cinematic Batman, and we're going to do it again this time with James Bond. And I'm pretty much just going to rant, and Pat's going to
chime in with a few things that I know.
Exactly.
And I could talk about how awesome I was at GoldenEye, the video game. I knew where people spawned, so
and that's actually
try and play me.
That's actually a blind spot for me because I never had a 64. I only got to play that twice. Sad, Jacob. All right. As we mentioned earlier, there are 23 official Bond films, so there's a lot of ground to cover. I will not be talking about every film, and if I leave out a piece of trivia that our listeners feel is interesting, they should contact us and let us know. So let's just get into it. James Bond was created in 1953 by Ian Fleming, and he starred in 12 novels and 9 short stories. My dad always used to tell me that there was an actor who played James Bond before Sean Connery, and I never believed him. But thanks to the internet, I can now say he was right and I was wrong. Of course, Dr. No was the first Bond movie, but nearly a decade earlier, CBS aired a live telecast. Like, it's a play filmed live. They used to do that a lot. It was an episode of a show called Climax, with an exclamation point, and they adapted Casino Royale. It was on Netflix for a bit, and it's not anymore, but it is still on YouTube. It is an adaptation of Casino Royale where James Bond is American. He's called Jimmy Bond.
Oh, nice.
And Peter Lorre is in it, of Casablanca fame, as Le Chiffre, the villain. It's actually pretty watchable. I didn't rewatch it before starting to rant anyway, but we'll put the YouTube link on there. It's about an hour long. Before Dr. No was made in 1962, Fleming wrote a screenplay that was called James Bond, Secret Agent. And he had 2 co-writers on that. There's a reason I'm mentioning this. But it was offered to Alfred Hitchcock to direct, and they wanted Richard Burton to star as James Bond. And when they both declined, Fleming adapted that screenplay into the novel Thunderball. Later, Albert Broccoli, Cubby, as they keep talking about him in the DVD documentaries, he bought all of the rights to Fleming's books except Casino Royale. And that's why there's a comedy Casino Royale that was made in the 60s. They didn't own the rights to that. And Sean Connery was cast for 1962's Dr. No. And he was the 7th choice. Cary Grant was one of those. And David Niven was. And David Niven actually is in that comedic Casino Royale. And Connery, obviously, is a lot of people's favorite James Bond. And he played the role 5 times in a row, 5 years in a row. Like I was saying, they made one every year. And while a lot of the characters were established in Dr. No, you got Bond, you got M, Moneypenny. It was the 3rd film, Goldfinger, where a lot of the Bond staples came in. The theme song, the first 2 obviously had the famous dun-dun-dun-dun theme, but there was no pop tune. It was in Goldfinger. We got fantastic gadgets, including the Aston Martin, goofier villain sidekicks like Oddjob, and it's when it started becoming really jokey, and he would make lots of double entendres.
You know, I have a question. These books, have you read any of the actual books?
I have not read any of the books.
Because I watched on YouTube today the Cars of Bond based on the books. It's from cnet.com, a tech review website. And all the cars that they showed seem to be dated far back beyond the films. And also that none of the cars in the books are the same cars that are in the movie, outside of one exception, which I forgot, the Spider. And even that Spider car doesn't truly exist because there wasn't a drop-top version of the Spider that James Bond drives in the movie. So it's very interesting to see all these old cars that obviously they're not going to put 1960s Sean Connery in a car from the 20s, but just something interesting to consider.
Yeah, I don't know if the books are period films. Like I said, they were written in the 50s. Fleming died before Goldfinger came out, so he died fairly early on as far as the film legacy goes. So
and when you look at the books compared to the movies, do they also, I mean, are all the fun little things there like the Q gadgets, or were the books kind of just like spy thrillers with a swarmy British spy?
From what I understand, they are straightforward spy thrillers. Some of them, I mean, the plots are barely taken from the books for the movies. Casino Royale actually being one of the more literal ones, the recent Daniel Craig one. I believe there was one, The Spy Who Loved Me, where Ian Fleming had in the contract they could only use the title. They couldn't use any of the actual plot from the book, which now I should have looked to see what the plot of the book was now that I throw that out there.
Interesting.
But,
well, that's just seems like a very weird thing to contract.
Yeah, and where I read that didn't have any citation or anything, and that
makes me wonder if he stole the book and
maybe
didn't
he did.
actually write it.
And Connery backed out of the role after You Only Live Twice and was replaced by George Lazenby, who was the only
Yes, isn't George Lazenby Australian?
Yes, he was Australian. Something I learned... No, this is something that was in the DVDs. They mentioned that Timothy Dalton was initially offered the role after Connery, and he was only 22. He turned it down because he was too young, but that always surprised me because Dalton would, as we'll talk about, played him in the 80s, but that was quite the leap. A lot of people now think On Her Majesty's Secret Service, George Lazenby's one film, is very underappreciated, and they say it's a predecessor to the Craig Bond because it gets really serious. But it really only gets serious at the very end. I can spoil that film. It's, 40 years old or whatever it is. He gets married to Diana Rigg's character, and she gets murdered at the very end.
I actually read a really cool article, on In-Flight magazine on the way back from my vacation in August, where they were talking to George Lazenby. And I wish I still had it or could reread it now, because he was going into such detail about why he didn't do a second film and how him and Diana Riggs were having like an affair on the set and it almost kind of ruined it. And he didn't make nearly as much money as Sean Connery did, and they didn't have as much respect for him as they did for Sean Connery. So he always felt like he wasn't allowed to come back or anything like that. And also the fact that he had very close to no acting experience prior to getting the film. I wish I remember exactly how he got it, because he went into such great detail about it. But just to think that this movie that had been a landmark and put Sean Connery on the map, they go with a complete nobody who has no experience.
Yeah.
And then it might even be the best one they've made. It's so interesting that they dropped him.
Yeah, I think they mainly only dropped him because Connery came back the next film. Like, I think he was like, oh, right, I want my job back. Even though he only returned for one more film. But that being Diamonds Are Forever. But I always wondered, I think Lazenby could have grown into the role. I think he was an interesting actor. I think he was like a model or something before they hired him. I don't have that in my notes. But,
that sounds familiar. I can't remember.
It is one of the examples of them referencing the recast. He looks at the camera and says, "This never happened to the other guy," like right at the beginning, and it's really an eye-rolling moment. It breaks the fourth wall. Going back to Connery, he later returned in 1983 for Never Say Never Again, which is another non-official Bond film, and that only exists because Thunderball was originally a script, and the co-writers sued for co-ownership of that story, and so they were able to sell the film rights to Thunderball as a screenplay / treatment or whatever to another studio who adapted it into Never Say Never Again. The one Bond film, even though it's not official, I've never seen Never Say Never Again, so I can't say if it's any good or not. But it's technically a Thunderball remake.
I did not know that.
And 1970s, my favorite Bond, Roger Moore.
Really? Roger Moore?
Roger Moore. I love Roger Moore.
I was going to ask you at the end here who your favorite was. That's an interesting choice. Why Roger Moore?
Why Roger Moore? Well, I actually like his films better because the Connery films, while Connery is definitive and whatnot, they are kind of difficult to watch. They're slow to modern eyes, I think. Especially the action, it's very awkwardly staged. The Roger Moore films have a great amount of humor. I think they're very entertaining, and Moore has this humor and swagger to them. I think those helped the films age better. Some of them are way too goofy, but like The Spy Who Loved Me, I think has the best theme. It has the coolest villain in Jaws. It's got an underwater base. So I don't know. I just like the Roger Moore films. I like his swagger. Not so much. He overstayed the role by like 2 or 3 films. But I'm a big Roger Moore fan.
That's interesting. You know, my favorite Bond movie is actually The Man with the Golden Gun. I mentioned it earlier, and I probably watch it every couple of years or so. But even looking at it through the lens of 2012, it's pretty hilarious because the man with the golden gun gets paid $1 million per kill, which in 1974 probably meant a ton of money, probably more like 10 or 20 times as much. But looking at it now, it's almost Mike Myers style joke where $1 million per kill.
I also like Moore because his era of Bond was kind of like where James Bond became the David Bowie of cinematic film characters, and that the films would conform to whatever the current trend was.
Yes.
You mentioned The Man with the Golden Gun, and that's kind of a Enter the Dragon type film. It came out a year after Enter the Dragon. And I think the climax is even very similar to the end of that movie with all the mirrors. I think there's something with a bunch of screens and Scaramunga's face. It's been a long time since I've seen it. And Live and Let Die is a blaxploitation film. Moonraker, obviously. And that's a trend that's continued. We talk about Quantum of Solace basically aping Jason Bourne. Oh, if you want to talk about Bonds referencing previous Bonds, For Your Eyes Only, the cold open of that film is Roger Moore at the grave of Diana Riggs' character. So, and then Blofeld comes and attacks him with a helicopter or something like that. But that's another, like, one of those hints that they are supposed to be the same. A lot of people have the theory, or they had a theory, maybe Skyfall will dash that James Bond is just an alias that these other people take on. And that explains the different actors. Okay. But I think Skyfall, without getting into spoilers, kind of dashes that idea.
What about Timothy Dalton, Mr. 2 films only?
Yeah, he only got to play the role twice, The Living Daylights and License to Kill. And I know my brother, for one, is a big Timothy Dalton fan because he liked the darker, more grounded feel. And a lot of people compare that to Daniel Craig's role again. But the only reason he did too, from my understanding, is because there became this legal dispute over who owned the character. I think MGM bought Eon Productions, or there was some TV rights being fought over. So his film kept getting postponed, and then he just stepped away. Getting back to this whole Thunderball debacle, though, in the late 90s, there was talk about another Thunderball remake that would star Dalton, and that was going to be called Warhead 2000. But MGM ended up buying all the outstanding Bond rights, so that film got killed. But
they pulled a Disney and just bought up all the things out there?
Yes, exactly. And that's why they also bought Casino Royale, and so getting ahead of myself, but that's why they chose to do that next. But that would mean skipping Pierce Brosnan, who was... he wasn't the first Bond I saw, but he was definitely my Bond growing up. I imagine it's the same for you because we're the same age.
Yep, definitely. That's the first one I remember seeing. That's the only one, definitely the first one I remember seeing in theaters. Not the only one, but GoldenEye was definitely a formative film for me. I would say that's the first time I ever actually cared about James Bond.
And same thing for me. And I think that's he had 4 films. I think GoldenEye is the best, definitely one of the top Bond films. I think that's fairly undisputed at this point that is one of the better ones. I think that's when I was talking about filmmakers reaching to try and make a definitive Bond film or a great Bond film, I think GoldenEye is on that short list. The one problem I have with the Pierce Brosnan era, and this continues on to Craig, is that product placement definitely became much more of a thing, especially if you see Die Another Day. And with MGM's association with Sony, it gets really irritating seeing Sony products and Heineken's and watches. But they've become...
Is that a Rolex?
No. They become.
What's the? It's an Amigo.
It's an Omega or
Yeah,
Amigo. It's a friendly watch. But other than that, and then that brings us to today's Bond, Daniel Craig, who signed on for 2 more films, and I've been liking his portrayal of the character fine. I don't have much to say about the Craig era because I think everyone's pretty familiar with that.
Well, if I can say one thing, I read the other day, as this happens when movies come out that are tentpole films, Roger Moore said that Daniel Craig is his favorite and is doing it way better than he did. So your own favorite likes Daniel Craig more.
Well, that's why I like Roger Moore. He's always had a sense of humor about it, and he's very modest, and so that warms my heart to hear him say that.
Well, I think that's part of the whole British thing. They're very self-effacing.
Exactly. Well, hopefully I didn't talk... I know I talked a lot, but hopefully I didn't talk you to death.
No. Well, the listener might feel different, but I found it all very interesting.
Great. Well, we're going to wrap it up here, and we'll come back, talk a little bit about what's coming up in theaters, and tell you how you can tell us about your favorite James Bond. And we're back. Quick note, that theme we just played is Johnny Cash's Rejected theme to the film Thunderball, sticking with our Bond theme for the show. And this is the part where we get to our listener feedback. And we had an omission last week, didn't we, Pat?
Oh, yes. Somehow I'll just have to fall on my sword and say it's all my fault. Somehow I missed listener Doug Little's email on current favorite film politician for our Election Day special show. And this is what Doug said. My current favorite political-ish movie is 12 Angry Men. All the characters are great, and it's a bonus whenever Piglet talks. I also enjoy that there is never a definitive answer if the guy on trial actually did it. Also, I think at the beginning there's one of those long, continuous shots, also known as tracking shots, with no cuts that you movie buffs love so much. I love them. Jacob, do you love them?
Oh, of course.
Okay, well, moving on, Doug continues with, basically any movie I watched in Miss Coop's class in junior high was good. You know what I'm talking about, Rosdale? You guys have some history, I see.
Yep.
And 12 Angry Men, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and Glory, which I also watched in school. His honorable mention, to steal a phrase from a show we're both fans of, Film Spotting, his honorable mention is Election with Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon. So thanks, Doug, and we promise we'll do our best to get comments into the show. Now, we have a new way to get a comment in the show. If you go see a movie, say Skyfall or whatever we decide, whatever we're about to tell you we're going to watch next week, get out of the movie theater and you can call us and leave us your thoughts immediately on our hotline.
Wow.
So you leave the movie theater and you want to tell us your thoughts, or you're thinking you're going to forget them or whatever, put this in your cell phone, 515-412-0737. Once again, 515-412-0737, which will affectionately be known from here on out as the FWOC phone line, kind of like the bat phone, I guess.
I like it.
There's the new phone number. There's Twitter, which is Filmcast WOAC. Our Gmail, filmcastwoac@gmail.com. And, of course, leave us a comment on the website. And until we get 1 billion hits a day, it is most definitely going to get you in the show at this point. So leave a comment.
This week I want to hear about people's favorite Bond, their favorite Bond film, their favorite Bond girl, favorite Bond song, who they like to play in GoldenEye 64. Pretty much.
Maybe their first Bond experience, because mine was License to Kill, but I remember nothing about it.
Yeah, and you're probably better off for that. What's coming up in theaters this week, this Friday? Lincoln Goes Wide. Sorry if anyone listened to me last week and then went to the theater hoping to see Lincoln. I think it was only playing in like New York and LA or something. Also coming out, Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn, Part 2, which I'll probably have to see eventually. Don't think we're going to review it, though. Also, coming out, I don't know how wide these are, Anna Karenina, I don't know if I said that right, and The Silver Linings Playbook, the new David O. Russell film that's getting a lot of buzz, actually.
Yeah, it won quite a few film festivals already.
But I don't know how wide that's going to be, so I don't want to guarantee we're going to review that. It's kind of maybe Lincoln this week, Pat? What do you think?
Let's go Lincoln. We might as well see what could possibly be Mr. Daniel Day-Lewis's third Golden Statue performance, because it seems like everybody is ranting and raving about, they're worried he'd take over the film and be Daniel Day-Lewis, but that's not what I'm hearing. So maybe we'll come back and we'll have different opinions after we see it.
Next week we may do that holiday movie preview. We might just talk about Spielberg. I don't know yet, but if you have an idea, listen to what Pat said. Until then, I want to thank you for listening and say goodbye now.
That's a wrap.
I'm finished.